So, welcome to Life, Death and Shopping. 65 million people die each year in the world. That is 178,000 each day. 4,425 each hour, and 120 die each minute. Since I figured that most of the people here will take a nap after lunch, I figured that it will be less than 120 people in this room. So, and this is what we're going to talk about today: predicting death, which is basically churning life, and this is what we're going to talk about today: event prediction. So we're talking about a timeline of events that we want to predict actually when it's going to happen, when someone is going to die, when somebody is going to buy something, when is some client going to churn. We want to predict failure of engines and so on. My name is Dina Bavli. I'm a data scientist at Summit AI. What I basically do all day is build acoustic modeling. This is a picture from yesterday with my kids. I graduated my master's degree where thank you. I graduated my master's degree. My thesis actually dealt with classifying online persuasion. Tomorrow, well, actually in 2 weeks, I'm going to be building acoustic models at the DLR, which is the German Aerospace Center. And in my last position, I predicted purchases. And this talk is about predicting purchases, and which is the same thing as event predictions, survival analysis, and all the concepts we're going to cover today are related to one another. So what we cover? We're going to actually cover the basic concept of classical ML. We're going to cover the basic concept of survival analysis and churn prediction and event prediction and purchase analysis. We're going to talk about moving windows. We're going to talk about how to quantify the history of a user using window functions. And then we're going to talk about how we can use NLP concept in order to sequence behaviors of users. And then we're going to address the order of events using NLP concepts. So let's talk about classical ML. We have features and we have the target. So we have some kind of table with each row is a sample and each column is actually a feature. And we have a label, a target. Let's see some example. This is a small sample from the Iris flowers dataset. It can be, our features can be all kind of measurements of the leaves, of the petals of the flowers. And the target can be which kind of a flower it is. It can be biological measurements like cancer and the tumor radius and textures, and the target can be whether or not it's benign or malignant. And we can talk about house prices, where the target is the price of the house. When we are talking about predicting events, or predicting death, or predicting churn of clients, we're actually talking about data and its timeline. Usually when we want to examine some kind of a new medicine, we have a trial. So we started the trial with all kind of people that are sick. And the start of the trial, it's when we're starting to log the event. And then we end the trial. And what happens after that, we don't know. If people die during that trial, we know what happened to them. But what happened after the trial is ending, we don't really know. That concept is called sensor data. We are using our data within the time frame in order to predict how many time from the start of an experiment and the use of a specific medicine it will help, or the patient is going to die. So this is usually how survival analysis and churn prediction actually look at the data over timeline, and the prediction itself, it's how long until something will happen, how long until event, what is the duration. So the human resource is limited to the duration of his or her lifespan, while time is unlimited. So usually we're talking about the duration until the event, but I want to offer you another way to look and build features for that prediction. What I want to offer is actually to measure all the past of a client, of the logs of an engine, and to aggregate them into features in order to predict whether or not, into some kind of a binary question actually, whether or not next week or the next day something will happen. If we have all the events that are connected, all the logs that are connected to some kind of users in a retail website, we want to take all of those events and then aggregate them in order to predict whether or not in the next week they will purchase something from that website. So what we want to do is actually take the data of the past, like the first 2 weeks, in order to predict the third, and then to take the 2 weeks after that in order to predict the fourth week, and then so on. But in order to evaluate our model, we'll need to actually avoid dates and user overlapping in the evaluation. So in order to do that, we're going to use moving windows. I know that there is a concept of time series that is sliding windows, and this is maybe it's similar, but it's not the same. So what we really want to do in our case is create of the list a list of dates that we want to run our model in those dates. Maybe it can be a 2 weeks period with that every day we're gonna run our model in that date. And then we want to cast it into our data frame in order that actually we are multiplying our data frame, so that if there is a user with an event of a specific day, for each model run date, there will be a multiple row according to the model run date. And after we have each event of the history and we have the model run date, we want to understand what's the distance of this event from the model run date in order to understand how we can aggregate it according to the distance from the model run date. Usually, especially when you're dealing with retail companies and retail data from website, we're talking about terabytes of data. And also some of that data is turning irrelevant really, really fast. So maybe some of your data that something that happened 3 months ago doesn't really affect of whether or not a user will purchase in the next week or not. So, and also it's a lot of computing power to aggregate all of the data. So you might want to limit our time frame into, here it's 2 weeks, but it can be a week, it can be a month, and whatever you like. And actually, when we're done, when we have all the all the relevance date and all the model run date, we combine all of those into one data frame to aggregate it into other features. In order to do that, we need to use union and reduce. So this is Bob and Alice. We're gonna use them a lot. Bob and Alice are user in some kind of a shopping website, and Bob searched for went into the category page. He looked around and he wanted to buy furniture. Alice searched for a specific product that she wanted to purchase, and then Alice went into its detail page. And then Bob, in another day completely, searched for a specific item. Okay, this is our data. Then we want to run our model a few days later. We want to aggregate all of the past data after June 30th. So we have our modeling day, and we have our relevance day to that model. This is just the difference between the model run date and the date of the event. In order to aggregate those events, we're gonna use window functions. You might know them from SQL and pandas expanding and rolling. But since all of my data was from retail companies, and this is terabytes of data, I used PySpark. So expanding windows of Windows functions is inclusive, which means you run on the first row, and then on the two first rows, and then on the three first rows, and so on. And the rolling windows is running on the first two rows, and then on the third and fourth, and those are actually exclusive time windows. But we are going to use, I'm going to show you example using PySpark. So it's really similar to the way it's built in SQL actually, where you have the window and you have the partition by. You can partition it by a user specific ID of a device, or a specific ID of a user, and the run dates. And then you order them by the relevance day. You want to see the history of the user according to when it occurs. And you have the range of those aggregation that you want to apply. Whether it's a day before, it's the 3 days prior to the model run date, whether it's 2 weeks before. And then on that window functions, you can aggregate it. You can sum, you can calculate the average, you can calculate the standard deviation in order to create new features to your model. Our windows can actually be exclusive or inclusive according to the way we want to aggregate our data. This is the way the window functions will look like, whether if it's expanding or rolling a time window, if it's exclusive or inclusive. And whether or not to use a rolling or expanding, usually when we're running a model, on the other end of it, we want to see which feature are more predictive, which is more has more contribution to the correction of the model for the prediction. So in one case, if you're using expanding window functions, you actually have a lot overlap, because if you're taking the week, it's also contained inside the 3 first week of the aggregations and so on. But then again, you can just you can just lose feature when you're checking the correlation to the target later. This is an example for a way this will look like if you're just aggregating a day before. This is the window function. And this is how you cast it into a new column, the aggregation of sum over a period of time window. When we're dealing with numeric features in those aggregations, we will need to pivot them and apply all of our aggregation. It can be different kind of aggregations. It can be the average, it can be the max, minimum, whatever it is you want to model. It doesn't really matter. You're supposed to experiment with your data which features are more predictive in your case specifically. And when we're dealing with categorical features, we don't need to use pivot. And we're gonna come back to Bob and Alex soon. After we did all of the aggregation for numeric features and categorical feature, we basically joined them together. And here is Bob and Alice. So we have all the categories and the model run date, and it's the relevance dates for each event to the model. And then you can see the gender, male and female, and the way you aggregate them. So you can see on the down the numerical feature, the counts of the events that we count them, and above you can see the categorical features and the way it will look like after all the aggregation when you will join them together. Now, this is a specific one model run date, but you can multiply the process for many model run date in order to actually have more predictive data, because you're actually multiplying your data set and your labels. So in the end, when you model this data, you don't put into the model the date of the model itself, or the user's ID, or the device ID. You just put the rows of all of the aggregated feature, and whether or not in the end, a week after, it purchased or not, or in the week after, did it churn or not, and so on. So what's with NLP and sequencing the behavior of users? What's the connection? So this is the customer funnel. So we have like awareness, we have discovery, evaluation, intent, and purchases. So awareness is like somebody went and clicked on an ad. Discovery is when he's checking some kind of options, maybe he's looking for maybe a furniture. He's not sure where he wants to what he wants to buy, and evaluation is comparing all kind of products, all kind of hotels, if it's a booking site, all kind of flights and their prices. And then he is specific. He has intent to purchase a specific flight. And then he makes the booking for that specific flight. A similar idea to that can be seen when you're analyzing a sentences. It's like, I ate a banana, and I ate a banana and an apple, and I ate a banana, an apple, and a blueberry. So the order of what we eat doesn't really matter. Another concept of NLP, it's tokenizing, limitation, and stemming, meaning that we're converting the words into its basic form. Swimming becomes swim, swimmer, swimmers, swam becomes swim, mice become a mouse. It's just converting the words into its basic form. But when we're using NLP concept for event prediction, we don't really need to use those concepts, even though they are very, very basic in NLP. But what we can do is use NLP methods in order to weight our events. In order to do that, we're going to use TF-IDF. TF-IDF is the term frequency inverse document frequency. It's how statistically important a word is in a collection of documents. So you have the frequency of a word within a document and the frequency of a word across documents. And TF-IDF is the multiplication of both. So let's break it down. What is TF? It's the term frequency between the document. So how many times a specific word appear in a specific document, and the total number of words in that specific document. So we have I ate a banana, which is 4 words. We have I ate a banana and an apple, which is 7 words. We have I ate a banana, an apple, and a blueberry, which is 9 words. So when we're calculating TF for each sentence separately, we can see that the fourth one, the distribution is a quarter. We can see that in the second document is 1 divided by 7. And in the third document, we have 1 divided by 9, except for the letter A, which is 2 divided by 9. And now we're gonna go back to our event prediction and Bob and Alice. Okay. In our case, if you can see the events, we have a category just for Bob, a search for Bob and Alice, and details just for Alice. Here you can see that the weight for each event for each user. For Bob, the category weight is half, 0.5, and so does search. And for Alice, is search and details are both 0.5. So what is the inverse document frequency? It's the log of the total number of documents divided by the number of documents that contain our specific term. This is the specific. This is the equation that sklearn uses for TF-IDF for IDF. We're going to actually use the standard IDF, which is this one. When we apply it in manually using PySpark, this is going to look like that. We're casting our IDF into a column where we log all the counts of a specific word divided by the count of the words in the document. And in Bob and Alice's case, it's going to look like that. Now we have our TF, we have our IDF, and now we want to multiply them in order to calculate our TF-IDF, which is our weight. So TF-IDF again, it's term frequency inverse document frequency. It's the relative weight of, in our case, of our specific event. So the basic version of TF-IDF is actually the TF multiplied in the IDF, in the inverse document frequency. And we're going to look only on Ali's case, so you can see it better. We just multiply our TF and the IDF. This is why it's simpler when we cast our weights into the data frame, to just multiply it across a data frame. And this is why we actually map it into the frame, into columns in our data frame. So we just using basic functions of collect, for example, and then we create map and use chain in order to do that. And this is the way we'd calculate TF-IDF after we cast the IDF into a column. We just multiply, we create a window function of over time. This is a window function in order to weight each event daily. So what's the weight of each event daily? And then we count those events, creating the how many events we have in that specific date. And then we create the TF-IDF, the weight for that specific day. The TF-IDF is relative to the size of our corpus for how many documents, how many days we take into account, how many events we take into account, what is our data set. Okay, that's great. We used NLP concept in order to weight our events, and how we're going to use it as a feature. So we're going to, let's assume that we have Bob and Alice, and we have their weights. We know what's the weight of a specific day. We have here we have the average of search weight. We have search weight average 5 days before the model run date, and we have the category weight average 5 days before the model run date. And great, we have it in our basic form of features. But similarly to the way we aggregated all kind of features according to moving time windows, according to the model run date, this is one option to do that. Another option to do that is actually take it into account as an array of features, creating arrays of features. In this case, we have Bob. He went to a website of categories, and then he searched, and we have an array of weights. And for Alice, we have another array that she first searched and then details, and then we have the event weights of search, and then the weights of the details. So we covered the basic concept of classical ML. We covered the basic concept of survival analysis. We talked about moving windows and how to use them, which is, and then we talked about how to quantify user history using window functions. We talked about NLP and how to apply a concept of TF-IDF in order to sequence behavior of users, in order to weight events, and 2 ways to apply it. And we didn't address the order of the events. We just converted them into weights and into strings of arrays. And while some models do take into account the orders inside arrays, some models have a hard time dealing with those kind of features. So let's address the order. Let's talk about the order. So let's see the next example. Dave's love bananas and allergic to strawberries. Dave loves strawberry and allergic to bananas. In this example, there's a difference of life and death. And here the order of the words inside a sentence does matter. So we're going to talk about another NLP concept, which is anagrams. This is a cow, and she jumps over the moon. So when we're talking about unigrams, we're actually talking about 1 gram to take into account into the model, which is a different token for each word, which is basically what we did before with the events. But when we're talking about big grams, which is 2 grams, it's actually the tokens are 2 words in a sentence, and it's moving. It's moving. It's the first two rows, two words, and then the second and third, and so on. The cow jumps over, and this is 2 anagrams. When we're talking about 3 grams, we're talking about a window of 3 tokens combined. And again, it's also a moving window. The cow jumps over, and so on. It's a moving window. And then when we use that to put into a model, we're taking the account of the weights of that specific order of events. And its weight, and according to the entire corpus, the entire data frame of events. How many times a client went to a detail page and then he had to cut. How many times a user search for a specific location and then search for a specific hotel and the detail page of that hotel and checked dates and then booked it. Another concept that take into the account the order, it's skip gram. This actually takes into account the events before and the events after, the words before and the words after. And using skip ground, you can also use it in order to weight the features. But that is a story and shall be told another time. And I have a flight to catch. And that's it. Questions?
What are you flying?
To Vienna, to Germany, for research. Yeah. But I have 2 kids. I don't know. I'm guessing that you weren't here when there was the slide. Okay, so I have 2 kids. So I'm basically going to be a single woman for a week. And then they're coming to me. But okay. Yeah. But I'm going to be a single lady for a week. So.